evening to my friends in the US. It's 9 o'clock in the evening at Central Time. It's around 6 to 7 a.m. in Israeli local time, and it's in the afternoon in Japan. Um, it's January 1st, and first of all, I would like to pay condolences to the victims of uh, the terror attack in New Orleans. It's very sad. But, anyways, welcome to my podcast, Hannah Klein's Time. I am an author, and I also have a homepage, officialhannahklein.com. I randomly post my blog there as well. Today's guest is Reverend Barry Denison. He's a CFO of International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. ICEJ, in short term, as you can tell, is a Christian organization, and I believe now it is a very large movement among Christians to recognize Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel. I would like to ask Barry various questions about his organization's cause and also the history of Christianity in Jerusalem. ICEJ contributes largely to the people who were devastated by October 7th. Barry himself lost his friends on that day. It was truly heartbreaking to hear his story. It was not just a murder, but it was horrible incident that happened to Israeli people on October 7th. And even now, there are hostages in Gaza, and they have, well, it's still January 1st, so they miss Hanukkah with their family. People would say that maybe a lot of people die in the war. However, this October 7th, it was not just a murder. And then there are mockings by journalists using the term that Israeli people used. And I just hope that they stop doing this. But when I heard October 7th, everything, the worst things that were in the corner of my mind just came vividly into my mind. And I felt so terrible for the victims. It was too brutal, too harsh, and too cruel. Well, thinking back the atrocities, I think that what I can explain is with words is probably not enough. And I also started to remember about an organization called UNRWA. Well, I was discussing UNRWA before that, but it was much more in detail than I I did before October 7th. But anyways, after a while, I started asking Barry questions about what he was doing. I could not ask him publicly what he was doing when he posted something. ICEJ has done a lot to support people, and also has donated vehicles such as ambulance, and actually I myself have encountered a person whose cousin was slaughtered in Nova Music Festival. Today, my purpose of interview is not about the Japanese media bias. However, I would like to introduce ICEJ, based in Jerusalem, and what the organization means for Israel, and also what it has done after October 7th. And I would like to finally welcome Reverend Barry Denison. And I have been looking forward to this day for a long time, and finally this came to be true. So please welcome my friend Barry. Okay, so how are you now?
Well, it's been a tough year, but glad to spend a few weeks here with family in America.
Oh, yes. Yes, it has been a very tough year for, I guess, people, not just Israeli people, but those who have relatives there. Yeah. So,
Yes. Yeah.
and I I I just I don't it's kind of hard for me to understand some Japanese. I mean, you know what? I'm not speaking ill of them, but to them probably it doesn't sound so realistic just listening to the news to them, but I hope that eventually they understand how terrible October 7th was, you know. Um, but your organization has been helping uh, the victims of October 7th, as I understand. Yeah. And So, um, would you, so you told me about the purpose of ICEJ. It's based on the teachings of Isaiah, in the Bible. But for, I'm sorry, probably like your screen is not working, like the voice is not working again. Uh, okay. I hope it's working. Okay. If you were to explain uh the cause, through the Bible, um that your organization, creed is, how would you explain to them?
Of the verse in Isaiah 40, verse 1 says, comfort my people.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting verse because obviously prophet speaking on behalf of God
Mm-hmm.
is addressing somebody who is not the Jewish people, the Israelis, telling this foreign people supposed to comfort my people. Now, the relations between Jews have been very complex from the beginning. About the 3rd century AD, the Christian community was strongly persecuting the Jewish community. And we've seen that almost anywhere that there's a Christian community, and in Russia, there were the pogroms. Spain, there was the Inquisition. In World War II, there was the Nazi Holocaust. But Germany was the birth of the Protestant Reformation. So in our generation, it's very poignant that we, 1,700 years.
Sorry, could you say it again? Like I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Could you explain it again, please?
Yeah, it's interesting, the relation between Christian and Jews, and
Yes.
that the Christian community has persecuted Jews for 1,700 years. Today, the Christians who believe the Bible are understanding God's told to comfort them. We come and comfort them in any difficulty. Christian embassy was started in 1980. It's an interesting year in Israeli history. That was several major things. First off, that was when the peace treaty with Egypt was signed.
Oh, yes.
That was also when they passed the Jerusalem Basic Law. It's a very short law, but it says that Jerusalem is the eternal, undivided capital of Israel. At that time, there were 13 nations with embassies in Jerusalem.
Oh, okay.
Arab League sent messages to these nations. If you want to continue to buy oil, so all of the embassies left Jerusalem and moved down to the area of Ramat Gan near Tel Aviv. And a group of Christian leaders in that year said, it's clear that Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish people. So we should start a Christian embassy. Now, while we have the name embassy, just a nonprofit organization. And it was interesting, the office that registers nonprofit organizations saying you can't use the name embassy. or diplomatic organization.
I see. Yeah.
With someone in the prime minister's office. And the prime minister at that time was Menachem Begin. And one of his senior advisors had made Aliyah. He was a South African Jew, and he had come to, and he in South Africa had worked very closely with the Christian community in Israel.
Oh.
So he took it to Menachem Begin, and Menachem says, if they are here to support us, they can have the name embassy. The reason for the name, it was to take a stand that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. In these 44 years, in 1980, we had the practical projects. One biggest project is helping
Sorry, helping who?
For example, live in the former Soviet Union.
Okay, I see.
Plane tickets so they can return to their biblical homeland. Never lived there before, but helping them make Aliyah. Aliyah is the Hebrew word that they use to communicate this coming home. But literally, Aliyah, as a Hebrew word, means to go up.
Oh.
And there were songs of Aliyah, songs of ascent, songs of going up that they would say as they went up the steps towards the temple at the time of Jesus. Aliyah for French or German or American for generations, and coming to Israel is because anytime you take a step to obey God, you rise up spiritually and you get a little closer to God. As God said, the land of Israel, Eretz Israel, is for the people of Israel. When you reach to the land, you've done something to obey God, so you have ascended. You've gone higher spiritually.
I see. Well, that's interesting.
Of the Christian embassy, about 10% of those who've returned in history. Even with the war, there were almost 30,000 Jews who in another part of the world and came to Israel. And the Christian embassy paid for the flights and helped about 3,000 of them, about 10% of them.
Oh.
And we see that as a biblical injunction, because again, the prophet Isaiah, chapter 40, our purpose, but in chapter 42, I believe, verse that says, and the Gentiles, which is the non-Jewish people, will carry your sons and daughters back on their shoulders to Israel.
Wow.
And we see that again as speaking to the Christian community.
Oh.
And let's jump forward a little bit. Israel evacuated Gaza in the year 2006. Yes. Jewish communities, Jewish. They even dug up the graves in the graveyards and moved the buried bodies back into other parts of Israel. And so from 2006, Gaza has been a self-governing
yes, right.
entity.
Yeah.
It could have turned itself into a Singapore. prosperous, small city-state, it has received almost 20 years, 18 years of billions of dollars of aid.
Yes.
To build hospitals, schools, infrastructure. Fortunately, in this last year, we've seen that all of that infrastructure was underground.
Yeah, that was
Wasn't
awful.
the people,
Yeah.
the soldiers.
And they blew up the water pipes, from Israel. Yeah.
7, down south on October 5, earlier, with about 500 Christians from 50 nations as a part of our annual celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles. It's a region here in the States, we'd call it a county, translated into region or province. And the mayor of this region, he was at this meeting and he's expressing in about 2010, 2011, earlier, but by 2010 or 11, it was regular that Hamas would fire rockets at all of the villages in Israel. And so the Christian embassy, from that, we started in about 2010, we were donating bomb shelters to put by the bus stops, to put by the schools, to put by the children's playgrounds. Sometimes they fire rockets at Jerusalem. And thankfully, all modern apartments have a bomb shelter in the apartment. One of our bedrooms is a safe room. But when we get the warning that one is coming to Jerusalem, a minimum of 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds before impact.
Oh.
So you've got a minute and a half to seek safety. But in the communities on the border, Gaza, they have a maximum of 15 seconds.
Oh.
So close. And that's why a playground, the children couldn't use it unless there was a bomb shelter. Medical clinic couldn't be open unless there was a bomb shelter. And so we've put bomb shelters in the Jewish communities, in Arab, in the Bedouin communities, in that area. And so we've been doing that for 10 years. It didn't just start with this war. And he was there to say thank you. And he, in his gratitude, saying thank you for our help and assistance and support for these communities. It's comments saying something in the terms of, and you must come back next year. We invite you to come back next year. We protect the land of Israel so we can.
Your friend Mayor, right?
36 hours later, he was.
Yeah.
What's that?
Your friend.
Yeah. That was on October 5.
Yes.
And about lunchtime, we were finishing the meeting that he's saying that. And Saturday morning, October 7, at 8 a.m., between 8 and 8:30, his name was the first name of someone killed in the massacre of October 7.
Yeah. That was...
About him, because you mentioned the water. He had developed a strategy to unify all of the Jewish citizens of Gaza. And so all of these communities were giving Gaza additional water, more than that Israel already gives out of international agreement to Gaza. And they went in and they laid water pipes, and Hamas ripped up the water pipes to use them for rockets. That shows Ophir's of the residents of Gaza and the evil us to reject any benefit for the stated purpose of eradicating the Jewish people.
I still do not understand. I still do not really understand the purpose and the benefit of these excuse me, these people who want to annihilate, Israel. It doesn't benefit anything. And also, there are children and their children, now like 4 generations, 5 generations who are born in Israel. And they still think that, these Hamas has the right to take away the land.
Well, it's a part of their religious belief. It's a sad part of religious belief. And this is where I would say Western civilization, modern civilization today has a problem understanding this. We are educated to believe that going to try and behave better, kind, loving than a non-Christian. A practicing Hindu is going to try to be a better person than a non-Hindu practicing. Most of the religions of the world promote the higher values of love, kindness, mercy, forgiveness, charity, etc. Honest. And we use that paradigm to think, okay, a good Muslim must be better than an Arab who's not a good Muslim. And yet the doctrine, the teachings of Islam, by civilizations termed evil. Example, Islam does not say you shall not steal. Our other religions have some type of an edict against taking something that belongs to someone else. Islam says you will not be caught stealing. Because if you're caught, you shame the tribe, and then we must. It also says at another place, if you see something you want, want it, take it, steal it. And you can do that up to 3 times. If after the 3rd time you're not successful to steal it, then it's obvious that Allah doesn't want you to have it. So Islam is a religion that teaches the children from a little video of a game with probably a 2.5, 3-year-old Gazan Arab boy. Guess his age, he's walking but not real confident, dressed a mortar, and he's putting it's in there to watch them shoot across his living room.
Yeah.
So from his earliest memory, he's trained to kill the Jews.
Yeah.
Religious edict. It says, and a tree to you, good Muslim. There is a Jew hiding behind me. Come kill it. And so a product of our education. And unfortunately, in these radically Islamic cultures, the education is very destructive. So there is no benefit. And the purpose is to die a martyr.
Yeah, that's what I got I reached conclusion. Um, it's just awful. I do not have words on this, but I think that what you say is the reality of what's happening, really. And, yeah, it's so, yeah, it's, so, what do you think uh, would be a solution right now to end, to the end of the war, really?
The beginning.
Hmm.
The hostages. The war's over. All Hamas has to do is give back the hostages, and that war will stop immediately.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And even here, the Western world, the United Nations, it's like we are in a time of a spiritual confusion. Is a war crime.
Yeah.
But the UN doesn't talk about what Hamas has done, murdering, raping, killing civilians. From the Nuremberg standard after World War II. But they make false accusations against Israel. So one these last few weeks, you've attacked this hospital. It's a medical situation. That's a war. But under the international law of war, if enemy combatants take over a hospital and attack you from it, it's no longer a hospital. It's a military base.
Yeah.
So they accuse Israel of war crimes, and they don't address the war crimes of Hamas.
Well, here's a sad reality, that the state-owned, news network, just today, is actually blaming Israel of the war crimes. And they started to say, there were a few dozen, executed body. You know what? That's what Hamas did. Okay? They're replacing everything that, Hamas did and say Israel did. And they keep doing it over and over and over. And then there's this ICC judge, as I have told you, this woman, she is talking about Russia right now. But you know what? She's not talking about Russia. She's talking about Israel, of course. It's just.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I worked for about 10 years here in the U.S. as an economist. This was, 2004 through 2013. At that time, the shareholders of the major media companies, all of the media companies, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, etc., a large percentage of their stock owned by Arab investors who had seats on the board of directors and oftentimes owned half of it or more so they could issue orders as to how the news would be reported.
That is appalling.
It's the same thing we've seen with all of these anti-Semitic protests at American universities. For 20 years, Qatar has been investing billions of dollars into these American universities to buy chairs for teachers, fund the teacher, pick the teacher. And so now you have students who are receiving Islamic indoctrination as a part of their American university education.
I don't have words for it, really. I really do not have words for it, and just I don't have words really. And I have told this to um, a novelist, Dr. Ophir Ivory. He um, Japan, Japan, um, the Japanese terrorists commit 1972 Lod Airport massacre. And then the Japanese terrorists were very, very active during the 70s to free Palestine. And I, to me, like looking at like the university campus students, like they're like university campus students from 60s, for example, in Japan. Very radical, and um, I don't know what's going to happen really, to the United States really, ultimately, because it's not just anti-Semitic, but it's very anti-American.
Well, the radical Islamists who claim jihad, they openly proclaim it's not just to destroy Israel. They call Israel the little Satan. It's also to destroy America. They call America the big Satan. So they openly promote destruction of both Israel and America.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is very concerning.
Yeah, I just, yeah, even to this day, I tend to see this, trace of what happened on campus in Japan, and also, unfortunately, in the United States, I'm just so shocked at what the students were saying, not just, those who immigrated from other countries, but, those young generations of children who have no idea, screaming intifada, like just 5-year-old children or 6 years old children. They don't even know what that was.
But they're being indoctrinated, so it will be their normal to cry out for that. Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, may I ask, like, what made you like go to Israel to get involved in Christian embassy? Like, your maybe your life story a little.
It's a good question, and if you have any Christian background, they may relate some. I got my bachelor's degree in the New Testament, in the Greek New Testament, because I wanted to know what the scripture said. I didn't want to know what other men said about it.
Oh.
Got a master's degree in business administration.
Oh.
Out of a desire for Christian service. But organizations, from my perspective, they were very poorly organized and very poorly led.
Oh.
So I combined my studies with my business studies.
Oh, I see.
And we were working with the Brazilian church to train pastors, help them plant new churches. And we became fluent in Portuguese. Were at the point we thought our life would be forever in Brazil. Our children, we have 3 children, they were growing up, Portuguese was their first language.
Oh.
They would marry Brazilians, and our history would just become Brazilian church. But a time where we, in our heart, felt like God was saying, there's a new chapter. There's a change coming.
Oh.
A big change. Serious enough that it's the only time in my life I actually fasted 30 days to what's this change coming. And made a trip to the States to come to a meeting, well-known Christian leaders and everything, expecting to hear something that was going to be our change. 4-day conference, I don't remember a message taught, I don't remember a song sung, it was good, but it was not life-changing. But in Kansas City, went out for lunch with a friend who had been my first mentor when I became a Christian early on. He had become a Christian a couple of years earlier. He taught me through the Bible and stuff, and so I went out to lunch with Joe. And so he starts asking questions from the 11th chapter of the book of Romans. At one point, he's using his military experience, and he says, I know I'm throwing hand grenades in your theology, Barry. Response was, no, you're not throwing hand grenades. You're throwing suitcase nukes. This is evolutionary. Intellectual conundrum. So I know I had looked at every word in the 11th chapter. Of course, for the trees. I worked through what it said linguistically, but it had not penetrated. Mm-hmm. In Romans chapter 11, Paul starts out with a question. God has not rejected the Jews, has he? It never be. Yet that 1,700 years of Christian tradition. For 1,700 years, the church, God has rejected the Jews.
No.
And the church is new Israel. So old Israel, the Jewish people, it's done away with. It has nothing God's doing on earth. Because the Jews were cast out of Israel in 135 AD by the Romans. And only came back in 1848. So for almost 1,800, 1,900 years, there was no nation of Israel. So how do you explain what the Bible says about Israel? Oh, God's done with them. 11 goes on to say, rejected them, has he? God blinded them so that salvation would come to you, Gentile. That's an earth-shaking statement for a Christian of faith. Salvation is faith in Jesus, in his death. God blinded the Jews, the majority of the Jews, so they could not, out of love for the Jewish people around the world, so that the message of salvation in Jesus could come to them. it's a confounding love, an non-comprehensible love of God for the world. That he would let his people suffer this rejection for 2,000 years so that the message of Jesus would reach the world. It makes an interesting statement. In the one verse, it says, God blinded the Jews so that salvation would come to the Gentiles for the purpose of making. So the Gentiles coming to faith in that those followers of Jesus are supposed to do something to show mercy that makes them want to return to the faith in their Father, their God. Oh. And this whole chapter goes on. There's another section where God says, be not arrogant towards the Jews. You are arrogant towards them, God can break you off the branch of the faith and throw you into the fire. Again, that destroyed 9. I had learned about the Jewish people and it made me angry. It is a natural when we something that violates our worldview, our paradigm, our normal understanding. But thankfully, I had a conviction. He believed was not as important as what God had put in the Bible. So for roughly a year and a half, I read Romans 11 every day. It made me angry. It made me frustrated. And if somebody would run their fingernails down it and it would just irritate, the sound would irritate. Romans 11 irritated deeply. But I was convinced it was my until I believed it. And after reading that through 2 years, we went to Israel to visit a friend. This was in 1993 about. That friend was running an organization. Work. We moved to Israel then in 1995, raised our children there for 7 years as I served with this organization. Then we moved back to the States in 2002. And in 2013, then Dr. Jürgen Buehler invited me to come back and take over the operations for the organization. So 11 years now I've been back in Jerusalem. Wow.
I envy you. Because I would really, I missed a lot of chances to visit Israel, and I'm sure I will visit Israel after the war. Yeah. But yes. So you have been, you came to Japan to ask for donations, and you were speaking Portuguese at the time. Now it makes sense why you were speaking Portuguese to me. I thought you were like fluently, like fluent in like 10 language or something. But I still I spoke fluent Spanish, and sorry, I French is very difficult in pronunciation, so I just went back to Spanish. But Portuguese is kind of close to Spanish, so it's not completely, different to me. So, and then I was listening to your history, And I was like, wow, like your radio interview and like, yeah, and I was so impressed with your interview at the time. But I believe that there are a lot of like Christians, who are devoted to Israel. Like my friends, are very, do care a lot about Israel, and Israeli people in the States. But after October 7th, have there been like more donations coming from, Christian community to support like Jewish people?
The church has responded very well. Yes, the donations are coming in very well. We continue programs like our Home for Holocaust Survivors and building bomb shelters and helping minorities. But then we're also taking on now some larger projects. One of the communities stated was near Oz. Near Oz was a small farming village, 400 inhabitants.
Mm-hmm.
Only 25% of their inhabitants were killed or kidnapped.
Oh.
And another 25% were wounded. So only 200 of physically the same.
Mm.
They were evacuated from the area for the war, and they've been temporarily resettled in apartments. And so we gift of 10,000 shekels to a family to buy furniture for the apartment the government was in. An empty apartment's not much good. In
That's very
Kfar
nice.
Aza,
Yeah.
of my friend Ofer Libstein, about the same size. There we are embarking on building a music center, so that as people return to their community, they're and using music as a way of trauma therapy to help them deal with the trauma, because an ending for them, they still have loved ones as hostage.
Yeah, it's very hard for them, I believe. And like, I guess, like, something like music is, heals people's mind. And also, like, I saw your posts about like like burned cars and, like all those like devastating scenes. I just could not believe what happened. Yeah. But so um so if so are you like planning to go back to maybe like Jerusalem and again like go back and forth, maybe like, oh, I guess it's not just the US like that the Christians are responding, I guess, right?
Yeah, the International Christian Embassy.
Mm.
The U.S. is not the largest donating country. Our four largest countries where we have offices working are Germany.
Oh,
U.S.
really?
is number 2, and then Norway. We have offices in pretty much every European country. The Czech Republic, a small country, the office there bought an ambulance after October 7th. Have office, in the UK. Have offices in India. Our Indian office is doing an amazing work because India is a very large country, and they have a representative in every province across India to speak to the churches about Israel. We have very good offices in Singapore, in Thailand, in Vietnam.
I see.
And Oceania, the Fiji, Tonga, others, and very good office in Australia. So it is a representing of the international Christian.
I see. Well, it's wonderful that, I guess like not just as a religious group, as people of people gather, based on humanity, and help others in need. It's something that we fundamentally need to do, I think. you know so yeah, so I thought that your work was very wonderful. And I understand that you have been really, really busy. So yeah, but
Continuing to do as much good as we can.
so anyway, going back to your story, how did you spend Christmas this year?
As I'm now responsible for the ICEJ USA finances,
Mm-hmm.
able to spend a little more time in the U.S., although our primary home from
Oh.
came to the U.S. because our daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren who had left the organization they were with and moved back here.
Oh.
So it was a very typical American Christmas. We had our Christmas tree and that's for our grandchildren, and spent the evening with, the whole day, Christmas Day, with our daughters, children.
Oh, that's nice. So, how many grandchildren do you have right now?
Only the three.
Three?
My
Oh.
daughter and son-in-law in Washington State on the West Coast. They have no children. And then we have a son in Australia who's still, say, trying to find who he is.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, I have yeah, well, like here, it's a platform where people get to hear, your voice. And if I guess there is an introduction to, how, people can get involved in your organization to help Israeli people in need. Maybe could you talk about it?
Website is just the abbreviation of the ICEJ Jerusalem, or the first letters, ICEJ.
Yeah.
.org for organization. That is the website of our headquarters in Jerusalem. Now, I say that because, for example, an American who wants to donate and get a tax-deductible receipt must donate through the American office. They can't donate straight to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Website. It's also translated into, I believe, about 12 languages.
Oh.
And so if somebody is not, is not a native English speaker, we have website, French website, Portuguese website, Danish, Norwegian, Finnish, German. I'm not sure how many others around the world. But I say that because we don't want to just ask for money. We want so out of Jerusalem, a biblical look at the events occurring. So somebody can go on the website and put in their email and get the email. On the website, you can look at all of the different projects. You know, somebody who wants to help the devastated by war. We have a fund called Israel in Crisis, and that's just wherever the greatest need is. I have a fund for the Haifa Home for Holocaust. It's a home in Haifa with about 70 residents who are survivors of the Holocaust. Because we're 80 years after World War II, they're all very elderly, so they need a lot of care and everything. There are other specific projects, like they can give just to bomb shelters. They can give just to trauma therapy. And all of those on the site. And on the website, you can give through an international credit card, or there's even bank transfer information if somebody wants to just transfer it to the bank in Jerusalem.
Oh, I see. One thing I am also interested in is that do you like give like online like Bible reading classes?
In Jerusalem has a webinar series that they do every Thursday afternoon, Jerusalem time.
Oh.
And there it'll be a combination of a biblical view and some topic. Recently, we had Jonathan Conricus, who was formerly the spokesperson for the Israeli army. And so he was answering a lot of details about the war. Also, the Christian Embassy headquarters in Jerusalem a meeting every afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., 2 hours. It went to just 1 hour over the Christmas. There's going back to 2 hours. And it's called the Global Prayer Gathering. You can find that, you can join. It's open for anybody to participate. And it's a webinar where one of our leaders, usually David Parsons, colleague of mine, give both a current event and a biblical look at what's happening in Israel.
Oh.
Then there's a panel of 50 nations. And so, Suzette Hattinga from Indonesia, a time of prayer over that. And then we'll go to another leader, another talk about something, what's happening. And so it's kind of Bible teaching and also current events, and then people praying about those current events. So those are two online tools that the Christian Embassy has available.
Oh, I see. But it's between 4 and 6 p.m.
4 and 6 p.m. Yeah, it's
on Thursday. It's probably like it's late at night. Yeah, but I wake up very late until I stay up late. But I am very interested in like reading the Bible. Like, it's very difficult testament, like we cannot also I'm not a prophet, or I'm not genius, and I don't think that I should be sorry, um construing, selfishly, in a sense. So it's uh I think that it would be better, much better, to have someone explain what the Bible means. And I
About a tool from our U.S. office.
mm-hmm.
The U.S. website is still ICEJ, but it then adds on USA.org.
Oh.
So the International Christian Embassy USA.org. And we have a program called the Israel U, which is an online series of courses that teach Bible specifically relating to helping people understand Israel in introductory course. I'm not sure, it's 6 or 7 courses, 6 or 7 sessions, lessons, is free, and anybody can sign up for that and go through this basic Bible teaching about how Christians should relate to Israel.
Oh, yes. I see. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say it here, but some Christians are really anti-Semitic, in a sense. you and yeah, unfortunately, I got some comments, like that. And yeah, I just feel that it's I just feel like, in my mind, that it's important to connect Christianity to Israel. So yeah, that's why I asked you about this, and I myself am interested.
Well, it's essential. I was born Jewish, the land of Israel, in Bethlehem. In the land of Israel, amidst Jews and Gentiles. He also, healed a Samaritan woman and others. And the church, part of the church has forgotten that. You may recently, where the Pope was in front of a manger scene, and it had a model of a baby Jesus in the manger wrapped in a Palestinian keffiyeh.
Oh, yes.
Jesus was Palestinian. Well, and spiritually, he had to. So if he was a Palestinian, he couldn't be the savior of the world. So Christianity believes that, so it's invalid.
Yeah, well, actually, on 26th, I was, talking, podcasting with, Ophir over who Jesus Christ was. Like, he told me history of, the birth of Jesus Christ, and also circumcision, on January 1st. But I felt that it's uh like we cannot probably we I think that Christianity and Judaism are really interconnected, really, like historically and spiritually, I think. So, but
Absolutely. The final chapter of the book of Isaiah, surprising verses that again, what I love about the Bible is no matter how many times I read it, I find something new every time. That obviously I've read it before, but I wasn't ready to receive what it said. And in chapter 66 of Isaiah, saw the church. But the way, obviously, he didn't know it like this. And God, every tribe and tongue, to come and see his glory. And goes back to the Gentiles, to the ends of the earth, who have not seen his glory or heard his name. And it's an interesting phrase there. He says, sends them back under a banner. Under a nest is the Hebrew. Earlier in Isaiah chapter 10, it's talking about Jesus being a descendant of Jesse, who was the father of David, and he would become a banner for the Gentiles. So to me, that banner is Jesus. The church has been trying to do for 2,000 years. But then the next verse, he says, and these Gentiles on carts to Israel. And that's what we're that generation of the church that I believe God has said, okay, the message has gone to the nations. Now these nations. So even there, the prophet is both the church and Israel.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so his, he's Jewish, so like Ophir is Jewish, so like his Hanukkah's, his his podcast was very interesting to me. And I had myself had minister explain the Bible, but I would like to, connect, what I understand to Israel. So that's why, and so, yeah. Well, I will send you the specific website to this Israel U courses that we prepared on the Bible here in the U.S. Yeah, I think so too, because my friend was also recommending me that I should, be involved in Bible reading. And, she was telling me all those, websites, like, and stuff like that. But like I said, like, well, I understand what you're trying to do, but, I just want to wait for my friend to explain that to me. Which meant, about you explaining about, the connection between Christianity and Israel. So, yeah. My friend has been my friends are Roman Catholics, so they are a little different from my households, but like, yeah, but I think that like learning about Christianity to me is also about knowing about my ancestor to me. So it's in a sense important as an identity, like so so I think that probably like it's time to let you go. Sorry,
thank you very much for the.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And I hope that you have a safe flight back home and you have a nice rest of the evening before that.
God bless.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye bye.